You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and organizations and the issues about fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. Today, we are going to tackle a few different issues. One is there is a huge case of welfare fraud and it related to immigration in Minnesota that is causing all kinds of ripples in the news stream right now. So I think it's worth talking about that. It's both affecting things in Minnesota and nationally. So it's certainly worth talking about. And I also want to talk about something that's closer to home here in San Francisco. They have just launched a lawsuit against food manufacturers claiming that they are besieging us with something called ultra-processed foods. So we want to get into that a little bit. And then finally, for our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, we're going to talk about a little bit of the nonsense that happens in our halls of Congress, where Jasmine Crockett had said some kind of goofy things that we'll dig into around Epstein. But before we get into any of that, let me introduce you to our panel. So today it's Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. And I will be your host today. My name is Jason McPhee. And, we always start out the show with a Liberty-related quote. This time we used a quote that we thought was, we've actually used it before, but it's so spot on with the whole immigration and welfare issue that we decided to use it again. And that is a quote from our Mr. Milton Friedman. So let me bring that up here. And it says, there is no doubt that free and open immigration is the right policy in a libertarian state, but in a welfare state, it is a different story. The supply of immigrants will become infinite. And, this really gets back to some of his ideas that he went through in his series Free to Choose, which I highly recommend. And he talks about how immigration was a real boon to this country about 100 years ago. But about 100 years ago, the government was fairly small compared to today, and the welfare state was really small. They weren't anywhere near, and we didn't have a war on poverty or any of these types of things. And so back then, that was a real positive for the country, but maybe not so much today, as we're going to talk about in this Minnesota story. Where, as Milton Friedman talks about, you have a welfare state and suddenly everybody wants to show up for that free lunch. Well, what do you think, Leon? I know we've talked about this quote before, but what are your thoughts on it?
I think Milton Friedman is totally wrong in his assertion here. He is suggesting that there are conditions under which we can have open borders and open immigration. He's suggesting that there's some condition. And I'm saying there are no conditions under which we can have open borders. None, zero. Because politicians, as we will see here shortly, politicians are always looking for votes. And even though we may have periods where this open border thing might have worked early in our history, there's no doubt about it. The borders were essentially open and people were coming here relatively free. People crossing the borders back and forth relatively freely. But sooner or later, in that situation, the politicians will always look for votes and they'll always use our taxpayer dollars to corrupt the system and attract people, some are quite undesirable, into our society. There's no way to get around this. Everywhere open borders have been tried, we always end up with people that we don't want here, whether here in America or in other countries. Open borders is a disaster. And I don't think there are any conditions that I can think about where it can work. And this is where I think Milton Friedman is totally wrong on this issue. There are no conditions.
And as we've talked about before, I mean, when you go back to when he was sort of highlighting a sort of a golden age of immigration, he's looking back into the turn of the 19th century, and he's essentially talking about his parents and a lot of other people's parents, who came over and boats from Europe and other places. And they didn't just, it wasn't completely open immigration. It was like you came through someplace like Ellis Island,
Yes.
or I guess here on the West Coast, it would have been Angel Island, I guess, is where they would have been coming through, I think.
Yes.
And so these are and so they would essentially screen people as they came through there, but they were only screening people to make sure you weren't a violent, crazy person, maybe, or that you had a disease. Right? I mean, they weren't really, they weren't putting up a huge amount of barriers to people to come in. And so that's what he's talking about, that being a relatively golden age for our country on immigration. I think we could see that a lot of good people came over during those times, but there was no free handout that was waiting for them. That was
Exactly.
But as you say, Leon, one of the things we've seen happen is that we've had all kinds of different welfare benefits that have sprouted up. The biggest of which I can think of is the war on poverty. And here are the numbers, and you can find this on Wikipedia. These are numbers from the U.S. Census Bureau that somebody's dropped there. But you can see that the war on poverty didn't start until like the 60s. And you can see that, the poverty rate, just really didn't change much net. In fact, it looks like it might have even been just maybe a little bit higher in terms of the gross numbers of people. Maybe percentage wise, it looks like we were down just a little bit, but still, all that money, all that time, over a 60-year period, just about, and it hasn't done anything, right? Except, of course, you have a whole bunch of people looking for benefits now.
Exactly. Well, the narrative that comes out of the war on poverty started by Lyndon Johnson with his Great Society programs. The narrative that comes out of that is that the government fought a great war against poverty, and poverty won. That's the narrative, and you can understand why, okay? Because the whole system was set up to keep people poor. Now, I'm not saying some bureaucrat, Lyndon Johnson, some bureaucrat sat in our office somewhere and said, let's just keep people poor. But the effect of their program was to do exactly that. Because what they did, for instance, in this quote unquote war on poverty, was kick fathers out of the homes, especially in Black communities all over America. And today we see what's happening in the Black communities in terms of fathers in the home. A lot of kids are growing up without fathers, which is a disaster. So the whole idea is that you expand this whole welfare system with all these rules and regulations and all these sort of things and that kind of stuff. But it does nothing but attract people to this system, whether they are native born, whether native born or they are foreign born. You're going to attract people to these sort of systems. So getting back to the immigration issue, you cannot have open borders under any conditions. You can't, because this welfare system, back in the golden age, there's very little of it. Golden age of immigration, there's very little of a welfare state. But the politicians sooner or later see that honeypot, sooner or later. And as soon as they hear, they get their teeth into it. They'll grind it to the bone. And this is exactly what happened. Finally, Biden decided, this is his golden age of an open border. And what he did, he opened up the border and he gave these illegal immigrants all sorts of quote unquote benefits. It's our taxpayers' dollars you're talking about. People who had no deserving of this thing. You even have to ask the question: how could someone wake up one morning and say Guatemala or something, Honduras, and he said, "Well, I'm going to America because Biden say I can get all kind of good, wonderful things"? Why would you blame them for doing that? If this is what this is message Biden and his administration are sending out, because these politicians always corrupt the system. Because they're looking for votes. It always happens.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on a lot of that. I just think if we go back to Milton Friedman's quote, though, and this is where I think that the key point is. He says, in a libertarian state. And that's the problem, right? Is how do we achieve a libertarian state? I mean, a libertarian state would mean that people in general understand that we don't want the government to be doing all this stuff. And therefore, the government never becomes big in order to do all these things. But it's sort of like a chicken and egg thing, right? And as long as the majority of people aren't really libertarian in spirit and think they can get a free lunch from government, then we're not really a libertarian state.
Yeah.
So, right. And all the incentives are going to be wrong, right? Because everybody is going to choose to think that they can get that freebie from government, and they're going to vote for people who promise it. And the incentive then is going to be to promise more and more, to essentially pile up a debt that is just insurmountable. And, maybe I'll pull up that chart on the debt real quick here, and you can see it. I mean, this is what we put ourselves into, right? We are clearly not a libertarian society. We are building up debt for future generations at a breakneck pace, right? Just completely reckless. And that is not what would be happening in a libertarian society. So, and by the way, I think that number now is, are we over 38 trillion already?
I think we just passed it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so too. So this number from treasury.gov is a little bit old. But anyways, let's jump into the first topic, which is this story on welfare fraud that's going on in Minnesota, because that really relates to what we're talking about. And it's turning out that the federal government has sort of raised some alarm bells, because we've been hearing that there's a lot of fraud going on there. There's been a lot of local news shows, as we're going to see, that have been illustrating this stuff. But now suddenly it's saying, hey, some of this welfare money that's been going there from the federal government now is popping up in terrorist camps and such. So, this is kind of nuts. And well, let's watch the video on this so we can kind of understand what's going on.
The state of Minnesota is in the crosshairs of the White House. The Trump administration is launching an investigation into fraud after the Treasury Secretary claims state funds is being sent to terrorists overseas. Our Bill Keller is looking into those claims. He joins us now live from the state capitol with the latest information. Bill, good morning.
Good morning, Tom. President Trump continues to ratchet up his attacks on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Our state now the target of a federal probe into claims that tax dollars stolen through welfare fraud have been used to support a terrorist group in Somalia.
Yep, you heard that right. Minnesota has a problem that seems to rival California in its ineptitude with its welfare programs and such. Some of this given to immigrants. They are literally winding up having some of this money wind up funding terrorists overseas. But let's find out a little bit more about how some of this welfare fraud has occurred.
So what's next? More investigations, more prosecutions, and more prevention.
But it looks like Minnesota taxpayers are going to eventually be out billions of dollars. And that staggering prediction comes from the man who's been serving as acting U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Joe Thompson.
Following the money is a full-time job for federal prosecutor Joe Thompson and his team at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota.
I think we've all come to understand the magnitude of the fraud problem here in Minnesota.
From feeding our future to autism treatment centers to housing programs, Thompson made headlines this summer in this interview with 5 Eyewitness News reporter Jake Holes.
He expects the scope of fraudulent use of taxpayers' money will exceed $1 billion.
Billions of taxpayer dollars lost in fraud. Let's find out a little bit more from this Eyewitness News how the autism program worked, because I actually did a report on that, and it's pretty staggering.
Take a look at this graph showing the explosion in this program. This is the amount of money the state has paid in Medicaid claims to autism treatment providers using your tax dollars. You can see in 2017, not that much, just more than $1 million. But you see the gradual growth here. In 2021, more than $80 million. But look at last year, more than $220 million paid out in claims, with a grand total of just shy of $700 million. This is what state investigators are now looking at.
Sounds like either there's a lot of autism in Minnesota or there's a lot of fraud.
As 5 Investigates first reported, 1 in 5 autism centers in the state is now under an investigation after a new crackdown on fraud. DHS says it stepped up enforcement late last year, around the time the feds raided these 2 clinics suspected of billing the state more than $20 million for services never provided.
So surely somebody from the government is checking on who's getting this money.
We have an idea of how many of those are not even real?
We are visiting every single one.
Is this now, for some providers, the first time that they've ever had a site visit?
I can't speak to whether it's the first time some providers have had a site visit.
And of course, all this fraud has caused the federal government to get involved. And now Trump is on the warpath with Tim Walz, labeling him a retard for allowing all this to happen.
Yeah, in that same post you mentioned Tim Walz, and you called him what many Americans define an offensive or retarded. Do you stand by that claim of calling Tim Walz retarded?
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with it. Absolutely. You have a problem? You know what? I think there's something wrong with it. Anybody that would do what he did, anybody that would allow those people into the state and pay billions of dollars out to Somalia. We give billions of dollars to Somalia. It's not even a country because it doesn't function like a country. It's got a name, but it doesn't function like a country. Yeah, there's something wrong with Walz.
So yeah, there you go. And by the way, this is what Leon said before all these migrants were coming in while Joe Biden was president. This is a chart that shows the monthly crossings at the border. And we've talked about this chart before on the show, but you can see that once Biden comes into office in 2020, suddenly the numbers just shoot up. So it's just absolutely nuts. Because of course he was signaling to migrants that, hey, we're going to take care of you. We're going to give you health care. We're going to, put you up in housing, all kinds of issues. He was flying them around the country and to get them to all kinds of different places. So just absolutely nuts. And here's a little bit of the issues too. Apparently the Somalia community in Minnesota is now, I guess there's about 80,000 people of Somali descent in Minnesota, according to this NPR article that came out today. So these numbers are just becoming huge, where there's these big blocks of people that are suddenly from other countries, all in a very short period of time. In some of these places. And of course, now because of all this, Trump is threatening a crackdown on all of these countries. So, Leon, what do you think?
I think we have a problem, Jason. That's what I think, okay? No. When you look at, now I don't want to smear all people of Somali descent. I'm sure some of them are honorable people, trying to make a living for their kids, etc. But within that community in Minnesota in particular, there are some real problems, okay? There are Somali gangs and all kind of stuff that roam this place and do all kind of mayhem in Minnesota. But the problem with this thing, with this fraud thing, it is almost predictable that this thing was going to happen. Because that terrorist group that they're talking about is a group called al-Shabaab, okay? They are well known in Somalia. They're out of Somalia, actually, but they are active in other states, other countries in Africa, in particular Kenya, like in the northern part of Kenya. They are very, very active because Somalia borders Kenya. But these people need funding for their terrorist activities. They have to find it somewhere. And it's been long known that a lot of the funding is coming out of right here in the United States. Now, nobody made the connection, as far as I knew, exactly to the Somali community in Minnesota, in Minneapolis in particular. But now it's becoming quite evident that a lot of the funding that went to al-Shabaab over the last 10, 15 years have been coming right there out of Minnesota, out of Minneapolis in particular. But the problem is, this gets back to the immigration issue. When you have open borders or something close to open borders, or when you don't vet the people who are coming into the country, which is exactly what is happening under Biden, you end up with situations like these where people come into the country and look for ways to get the free lunch, and sometimes they use the free lunch that they are given by these glorious politicians, Tim Walz in particular. And what happens? they find ways to send that money to fund illegal activity. And this is what is happening. And you see this Tim Walz, this man is a fool. And this man almost became vice president of the United States. I mean, well, I shouldn't say a fool, he's a buffoon. That's probably a better characterization of him. And this man almost became vice president. But the point is, this man sat there on his watch. He's been Minnesota governor for God knows how many years now. And he allowed all of this to happen. There have been no regular checks of some of these centers. No, look at the case you just raised with the autism centers. Who is checking on that? Who is auditing these books? Who is doing any of that? This was all going on while Walsh was during his administration, which is still ongoing. This is the problem when governments start making choices for us, okay? They always end up creating misery for everybody. And look at the outcome we now face. They are talking about billions of dollars lost in fraud, okay? And some of it have actually gone to to one terrorist organization so far as we know. There might be more. Who the hell knows? It could be more. But one for sure, al-Shabaab, have gotten this money. We have a problem, a very, very big problem. And I will not be surprised if the same problem that we now see in Minnesota, and in Minneapolis in particular, the same problem exists in other states. I will not be surprised at all.
Yeah, well, and this is part of the problem too, is that, intuitively, what Milton Friedman said makes sense in the sense that if you have free stuff, people are going to show up to take it. Right? Yes. I mean, that's that part. Certainly, we have no argument between us, but there are a lot of people out there who seem to deny. I mean, to me, this seems about as true as gravity. And yet there are people out there, certainly those on the left, who argue that, hey, yeah, they people are coming and, they're not, nobody's after free stuff. They all just want to come in and do work. And I'm sure they would if there was no offer of free stuff. We'd get the best ones, the ones who want to come to do work, right? Like happened 100 years ago in what Milton Friedman described. But and it's not just the left too. I mean, Cato libertarians, and I like them on a lot of issues, but on this issue, I think they're just nuts. They will argue that even under a welfare state, immigrants are a net benefit. And yet, I think the problem is that the way they're counting it is just missing lots of stuff. Like we saw in this one program. I mean, autism shot through the roof suddenly out of nowhere. All this money is just disappearing, right? I mean, are they really looking at those sources like that? And are there a whole bunch of programs that just aren't counted in the welfare numbers? I mean, one point I like to always point people to is, well, when Biden was letting people in like crazy and everybody was trying to say, hey, this is a net benefit, there's no problem here. And suddenly there were a few big blue cities that started seeing, there's a problem once they start. And one of that was Mayor Eric Adams of New York. He had such a big influx of migrants who were headed there because they all heard that, hey, they're putting us up in hotels. They're giving us, food cards. They're feeding us. And, well, let me just show it to you in his own words, because this would belay everything that you're hearing from these other groups that, no, it's a net benefit. Let's hear what Eric Adams said.
110,000 migrants. We have to feed, clothe, house, educate the children, wash their laundry sheets, give them everything they need, health care. We're getting no support on this national crisis, and we're receiving no support. And let me tell you something, New Yorkers. Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this. I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City.
It doesn't get any clearer than that. I mean, whether you call it welfare or about 25 other programs, that issue, as Eric Adams said, we have to feed them, clothe them, house them, take care of them. It's going to destroy the city, is what he was saying. Of course, now Trump has shut down the borders, so suddenly they're starting to get things under control a little bit. But yeah.
The main problem in this whole narrative is that there's a big conflation that goes on here that is deliberately going on here to try to manipulate the minds of the American public. It is true that immigrants, when I say immigrants, I'm speaking about legal immigrants. They are net benefit to the United States. There's no doubt about that. There's good data to support that. But the illegal immigrants are not. They are not. But everybody is nowadays on TV, the left in particular, wants to conflate these two things and say, well, immigrants in general are net benefit to the United States. That is a lie. Okay? Legal immigrants are, the illegals are not. Because you just look at what Eric Adams just said. You're putting people in hotels, some of them very expensive hotels. You're doing all this thing for them. You're washing their clothes. You're doing all kind of stuff. You're giving them all kind of welfare benefits and all kind of stuff. How they could possibly end up being a net benefit to the United States? How? It's not going to happen. The legal immigrants are, but illegals are not. And we should stop conflating those two things. This is a real problem. And people are throwing this thing around constantly, telling us, oh, it's going to be a net benefit to the U.S. Oh, it's going to be a net benefit to the U.S. Really? It's a lie.
Well, I will say that Milton Friedman would have argued with you even then, but he would have had no idea how crazy that the Democrats would have become, because he would have said that even illegal immigrants, assuming that they're working under the table, are a net benefit, is what he would have said. But the problem is he could have never imagined that Democrats would have offered them all kinds of welfare benefits. Right?
But this is just the point I'm trying to make, is the corruption of the system. That no matter how much you try to keep, the system clean, shall we say, the politicians looking for votes will always corrupt the system because they need those votes to stay in power. They will always do that. And this is my problem with Milton Friedman's assuming that there's a condition under which we could have this. I am going to say this. I know you're a libertarian, and I know you might like what I'm about to say.
Hold on. Before you say it, Leon, and if you're watching on public access, to see what Leon has to say, you're going to have to tune in to knuckleheadsofliberty.com to see the rest of the show, because we'll probably be going on for at least another half hour, probably talking about some of the craziness in San Francisco and some other stuff with Jasmine Crockett. But anyways, back to you, Leon.
No, I'm going to say this, okay? I firmly believe, okay, no matter who you are, you're a libertarian, you're conservative, you're conservatarian, which I call myself, whatever you are, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's no doubt about that. So even if we're in this libertarian state, I am going to say to you, eventually the corruption will creep in and they will go back to just do the same thing, looking for votes to keep power. I don't care what you are, unless we have checks upon your power grabbing ways. If you have no checks, even if you're a libertarian, even you probably have to be Jesus Christ to not grab at the power and try to keep it as best you can.
Well, and this is why I feel like being a libertarian means it's almost got to be like a religion, that, if you see government growing somewhere, kill it, get the raid. Stop it. Right? I mean, you've got to have a real justification, a really solid principle for where government should be. The way I think about it, I mean, this is sort of my principle on it, is that government's role should just be in defining and defending property rights, right? And the most basic of which is you own yourself. So that self-ownership principle, and then of course you own your own labor, because that flows from you own yourself, and so that is the basic framework, I think, of what libertarians would like of a minarchist government. And then you get into this weird area where some property rights are very hard to define. Maybe that's an area where we can have some debate and discussion about, like for instance, if the air somebody's polluting the air that you're breathing, now that starts to get into a really dicey issue, because who owns that air? How can you define what I mean, if we were in space, your air is what's on your little spaceship in your spacesuit. But we're all here on spaceship Earth. And we're all sharing that same air. And it's really hard. I mean, maybe someday we'll be able to define all this with property rights. But right now, that's a really hard thing. And so I think the solution will look something like government in those areas. So, but beyond that, you don't need government, right? I mean, that's it. And there are a few other weird areas too. Like, for instance, we're assuming adults, right? Well, what about a kid? Somebody who's not responsible enough to enter into a contract in that area. Maybe that's an area for government too, to set some rules in that gray area of, who really speaks for the child, the parent, the state, whatever, that kind of a thing. So anyways, but that's the simple model that I would choose to jump from, to spring forward with on everything. But there's so many things that, just like my broken arm, right? If I have a broken arm, what business is that of yours, right? That's right. So I mean, if we look at those principles that I've just laid out, you literally don't have to. You can just eliminate huge swaths of government, right? The government has no business in healthcare at that point, right? So I mean, that's a huge part, right? I mean, we're seeing that's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of over half of our government is dealing with people's retirements and healthcare, which, once again, government has no business in those areas, right? You can just eliminate it, because it's a you problem, not an everybody problem. What you're dealing with in your own situation, and that doesn't mean we can't have help each other voluntarily through charity and all that, but it just means that we shouldn't be doing it at the force of a gun through government. Anyways, go ahead, Leon.
But you see, this is the problem, though, that especially since 1965 or so, with the Great Society, government have twisted our minds so much that we now believe every time something go wrong in society, we always start to say, "Oh, the government should do something," and this is what the government should do something. Look at this Obamacare, say, for instance, which is nothing but pure fraud and welfare. Nothing about it, and they're still trying to prop it up. Okay, Trump is trying to tear it down, and I hope he does. But this thing, nowhere in the Constitution, in the U.S. Constitution, does it say anything about government providing health care to anyone. It does not say that anywhere. But yet, we have this Obamacare, and it was first mandated, well, now they kind of kill the mandate and all that kind of stuff that we're supposed to do it. Now it was promised that, all our healthcare costs was going to drop by $2,000 a year. Now it's skyrocketing out of control, and these Democrats now want to hold on to it so badly. They want us to not pay the insurance companies, the same insurance companies that they're always talking about are evil and stuff. They want us to take our tax dollars and give to them so that they can prop up this nastiness called Obamacare. This is what government does. It corrupts the system. It always does. Whether we're talking about immigration, we talk about healthcare, we talk about public education, whatever it is you're talking about, government always corrupts the system. And this is something that we always have to keep in mind when we set up our checks and balances within society, when we pass legislations and all these sort of things. Government always corrupts the system, and they bring about one thing, which is misery for everyone. That is their equality that they always achieve, and they're very good at achieving that. Misery for everyone. So we have to be careful when we say, oh, we're going to let them control immigration, let them control healthcare, let them control education. We have to be very careful, because it becomes a matter of power grabbing. It always does. Look at what's going on right now in public education with the teachers' unions and the Democratic Party. They're in bed to miseducate our children. That's what they're doing right now. I don't want to get too far off topic here. But the point is, though, the bottom line is the government making choices for us. And when they start making choices for us, they always make the wrong choice. Because no bureaucrat could sit in Sacramento or sit in Washington, D.C., and make better choices for me than I can make for myself or for my children. Now, my children are now grown, so I can't make choices for them right now. I can only persuade them to do things. And even then, they just tell me, go jump in a lake. They don't say that literally, but you know. But the point is though, we always have to keep government in check. Otherwise, we're always going to fail. Seriously.
Well, and the sad thing is when you say that the government can't make better than you can for yourself, but it's not even like there's a free pot of money. I mean, it's taking money that you would have otherwise made decisions with for yourself and then making those decisions for you, and maybe some other people as well, you know, maybe redistributing. But even more to the point, as we showed with that debt chart, it's not just even taking your money, it's taking your children's future money. And
grandchildren too.
Yes, and you know that huge mountain of debt again. That you know, I'll just bring that up one more time. But you know, this betrays that it's not even just, you know, it's not like it's making anything cheaper. It is taking those costs and putting them into our future. And that means for a lot of us, that means our children's future. They're the ones we are literally putting ourselves on our kids' backs. And we are telling them to essentially drag us around. I mean, we're almost, I think this became really clear to me during COVID, but I felt like we were just a society of vampires, if you think about it, right? I mean, you've got all these kids and they have no voice in government. And you got all of these people who were older people and they're all voting to shut things down. Well, that means shutting down their education. You know, all these kids suddenly were, getting no skills. They're just sitting at home, locked in, playing video games.
Yes.
While debt is being built up because it's not a free ride, right? I mean, somebody's got to be out there producing things. And we were just piling up debt in printed money to fund all of that. During that pandemic, I think we jumped up now about $10 trillion, I think, over this period of time. Sure. At least I think it's more than that, actually. And that's all just because for something of no benefit to the kids, right? And yet they're going
to be responsible for it.
Yeah. So
you really have to say, that chart that you're showing right there, it really demonstrates a really evil and immorality in our present society, because this debt is somebody is reaping the benefits of that debt today, but that debt must be repaid at some point in time. And the only people going to repay that is our children, grandchildren, probably even great-grandchildren is going to repay that debt. I think it's downright evil and immoral to require our children to take care of our comforts of today, or grandchildren to take care of our comforts of today, or great-grandchildren to take care of our comforts of today. I think that's evil and immoral. It really is.
Yeah, you look at the chart, and I mean, this area around World War II is what we often refer to as the greatest generation. Well, this clearly nothing to show for this huge wall of debt. Yes. We today are certainly not anywhere near a greatest generation. That's for sure. So, I mean, I don't know what metric it took for the 40s other than saying you defeated Hitler to call yourselves that. But I tell you today, all we've done is we haven't stood for anything except building up a lot of debt for our kids to deal with in the future. So yeah, absolutely nuts.
Indeed, more nuts than nuts itself.
But speaking of insanity, let's get to our other big topic, and that is San Francisco. This is a little more local to us. We're here in California, and not too many people have been talking about this yet, but just a few days ago, San Francisco announced that it is going to be suing a lot of major food manufacturers because, we can never, in our big blue states and big blue cities, we can never point inward and say the problem is with us and our policies. The problem is always point at somebody else who might have some money and say it's his fault, and let's see if we can get some of it. Well, we've got a little bit of
the deep pocket syndrome. That's what it is.
Well, we've got a little bit of a video to sort of let you know what this is all about from the press conference that the San Francisco attorney made, and let's watch a little bit of that so you can get caught up on what this issue is about.
We are here to announce a first-of-its-kind lawsuit against the largest manufacturers of ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods that are making us sick, plain and simple. Our case is about companies who design food to be harmful and addictive and marketed their products to maximize profits. So what are ultra-processed foods? We're talking about food that is not food, that is not found in nature, created by combining artificial chemicals with industrialized processes. You can see a few of the worst offenders right here. In recent decades, this industry has flooded the American food supply. Today, they make up 70% of our food supply.
So as you can clearly see, these are like everyday ubiquitous products that you would get at the grocery store. Smart One, Cheerios, Cheetos, just a whole list of things. Some we might consider junk food and maybe some not. Let's hear a little bit more about why they think these products are a problem.
While ultra-processed foods often have high sodium, added sugar, saturated fats, the health concerns are not just the amount of calories, fat, or salt. Ultra-processed foods themselves cause unique health risks because of their chemicals. The industry has created thousands of new chemicals, which the body metabolizes and craves differently. Many recent studies and massive data sets have confirmed the very clear link between ultra-processed foods and chronic diseases. Type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, heart disease, kidney disease, colorectal cancer, Crohn's disease, depression. And the impact on children has been particularly alarming. Unprecedented levels of obesity and type 2 diabetes.
So they seem to be blaming these products for almost every health condition under the sun, from heart disease to diabetes. So just to do a quick check on my own, I looked at the CDC data for deaths from heart disease from essentially 1980 to about 2019. And this data essentially shows that deaths are going down. Now, that's not perfect, because deaths could also be going down because medicine's getting better as well over that time period. But clearly the trend is going down. So I'm not sure that it's saying exactly what they think that this is saying. I mean, it sounds like they're just trying to throw all of our problems in one basket and claim it's all related to these foods, which is kind of nuts. But that would also make you think, too, that, well, if they've got this taken care of, they must have all their other problems taken care of in San Francisco. Of course, we know that's not true. As if you look, there's literally addicts all over the street there, as shown in this video.
San Francisco's new district attorney, Brooke Jenkins, is vowing to take a harder stance both on drug users and dealers. The issue is highlighted in a new viral video showing open drug use on the street. It shows a large group of kids getting off the minibus and having to wade through a crowd of people who appear to be using drugs.
So you can see that San Francisco's own policies literally promote people being out on the street using drugs and slowly dying on the sidewalks, yet they're targeting our food manufacturers, claiming that they're the source of health problems for society. But let's hear a little bit more of their argument.
Now, how did this happen? They use big tobacco tactics to research, design, and sell addictive products. They used addiction science and marketing techniques that followed the big tobacco playbook of creating the illusion and erosion of consumer choice. On the marketing front, they bombarded kids with product messages and advertising with cartoon mascots, from Tony the Tiger and Fred Flintstone to Paw Patrol. They used integrated marketing strategies with toy manufacturers and child-focused media companies, from Disney and Nickelodeon to Mattel, Nintendo, and Marvel. And they specifically targeted low-income communities of color and their kids.
So according to them, we're now targeting communities of color with these products. Really, Cheerios, that's like the most popular brand of cereal on the market. This is just nuts. But he's got his own personal anecdote to share with us, too.
I want to just share a quick personal story. When I was a kid, my mom used Pringles to get me to take swim lessons. And to this day, I love my Pringles.
So there you go.
How touching. How touching. Good Lord.
It's all about the Pringles.
All about the Pringles. He's upset. He's upset that his mom gave him some Pringles to take the swim lessons. Did he learn to swim in the process? He should have told us that. That would be a good idea. Oh God, Lord, what's wrong with these people? And you know what you notice about these things, these left-wing activists, because this guy is not a lawyer. He probably have a law degree. He's an activist. Notice what they do. We're no longer talking about processed foods. No, we're talking about ultra processed food. We have to make something sound so bad and scary. Oh my God, that the government is going to come and save us. And he's going to come and save communities of color, people that sort of have the same hue of skin like me. He's going to come and save them too. The Democrats are always trying to save us. I'm sure that fool is a Democrat. They're always coming to save us.
I didn't know we're like smart ones, because that's one of the items I see sitting up there on the are those like big items in communities of color?
I'm wondering, maybe I should check my community of color card to see if I know about this,
I mean, this stuff is nuts. This is like popular stuff in the grocery store. So they're saying literally this is stuff you find on every aisle. Are they saying that it's somehow white people are not buying any of these things? I mean, we're like half the population. I could say I bought in almost all of these items at some point or another.
No, Jason. What they're saying is that these community of colors, they're just a little more stupid than the white people. Okay? That's what they say. Okay? That's what the Democrats always say, because we're always a little more stupid than everybody else. So they have to come in and save us. Okay? That's what they're trying. They got to save these people in community of colors who just a little bit of more dumbass than everybody else. They have to come and save us. Okay? So, and we're joking about this in a sense, because this sounds so idiotic. I'll be laughing if it wasn't so serious. This gets back to what we've been talking about. Government trying to make choices for us. Okay? This is the whole concept that I said before, that a bureaucrat could sit in Sacramento or sit in Washington, D.C. and make better choices for me than I can make for myself. So this fool is trying to tell us that I, as an adult, do not know what's good for me, and I do not know what's good for my children. So he have to come along. He have to sue these companies to let them know that, you have to take better care of Leon and his family. This is what this man is trying to say. And this I find so offensive, that he thinks that the government can make better choices for us than we can make for ourselves. This is beyond absurd. I mean, I know at one time they sued the tobacco companies, and the tobacco company gave a whole bunch of money to the state. And who paid that money? The smokers, because you know what they did? The tobacco company just adding a few cents or however it was to a pack of cigarette. The smokers paid it. And these people don't ever realize that the tobacco companies didn't pay anything. The tobacco companies handed the money to the state, yes. But that came from the consumers of the product. And this is the same thing that's going to happen here. So I'm sure they're probably going to sue. Well, I'm sure the food manufacturers are going to fight this lawsuit, and it's probably going to end up at the Supreme Court down the road, or whatever it is. It's going to go, but it's going to go on. But even if they win, is we going to pay for that? We're going to pay the lawsuit, because they're going to hand maybe a few $1 billion to the state of California or the city of San Francisco. That might happen. They will hand the money to the city, but we're gonna pay it, because every time we buy this product, they're gonna have a little few cents more, maybe 10 cents, 15 cents, a little more that will be included in the price, and the deal will be all settled. Everybody gonna be nice and wonderful. Oh, this is the attorney gonna be claiming about, oh, it's so wonderful. My lawsuit has saved me from my evil mother who gave me Pringles to take swim lessons. Finally, I can get it off my chest. This fool, okay? But we gonna pay it. Just like the consumers of tobacco have paid the settlements that the tobacco companies had with multiple states. It's the consumer that paid, and we're gonna pay for the contents too.
This is what's killing me too, is that he's trying to. I mean, everything, all the arguments are just intuitively wrong that they're giving. I mean, maybe in this age of just I guess easy media, so many people, they just want to go on with whatever fad they hear, and they want to blame everything for everything else. But just think about how long have Cheerios been around? I mean, Cheerios have been around since before I was born, I think, yes. Right? And yes. Pringles, they were around when I was a kid too. Yes. And I mean, these items, that means they've been around for like 50 plus years. Our longevity has gone up over that period of time.
Exactly.
Country,
exactly.
Right? I mean, it's like, what the hell is he talking about? In trying to, now maybe if there's some idiot who only ate Cheetos and they nothing else but bags of Cheetos, and they bought into the San Francisco lifestyle of sticking a needle in your arm and laying on the sidewalk and eating Cheetos, maybe that might be bad for your health. But I think the bigger issue is probably not the Cheetos; it's the needle sticking out of your arm.
Exactly. I mean, and it's so appropriate to raise this problem in San Francisco. San Francisco have become a real mess hole city. Okay, I mean, I have to go down there because of my eyes. My specialists, both of them are in San Francisco. So sometimes I have to go down there, and sometimes I end up in places that
and you can't believe what you see when you go down there.
Exactly. I can't believe what I see. Exactly. My eyes are so weak. I have trouble driving that time. But boy, my eyes get wide open when I see some of that stuff done in San Francisco, man. It's unbelievable. But the point is though, these cities all around the country, San Francisco is not unique in this respect. They're always looking to blame somebody for the problems that they created for their own citizens. They always do. And everywhere, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Los Angeles, they're always blaming somebody else for the problems that they create. And it's usually in democratic-run cities that they make a mess of things, and then they want somebody to bail them out. Right now, who we think? Well, the food manufacturers, they make these ultra processed food, and now is the time for us to sue them and let's recover some money. Let's see if we can find a bailout for all the mess we have created in San Francisco. Oh, please give me a break with your BS.
Well, and did you see the way he framed the problem too? He said it's these chemicals, and they're put together in real chemically ways. They're just doing all these weird things that we can't understand. So it's bad. And they're like the tobacco companies, right? And it's kind of nuts, but this is what kills me. He's trying to sound scientific-y. He's trying to kind of throw jargon at you. And it's sort of like, let's say even if there were some problems with some of these food products, and it's possible that some of them aren't very healthy, but
right. I would agree with that.
Yeah, but do you really want the government to be the one that's the arbiter of this? I mean, I want to take people back to the example of the food pyramid, because this is something that the government unloaded on us when I was a kid.
Yes.
And one fact, I think I was just I think I was a late teen at that point, I guess. But let me bring this real short video, because the government screwed up on that, right? And that's
big time.
Science.
Yes.
Let me play this real quick video here.
Philip Townsend takes us back to 1992 to see why the food pyramid ended up doing more harm than good.
But the one thing we relied on to stay healthy, active kids, ended up being not so innocent. The infamous food pyramid. Heading into the 21st century, obesity rates were on the rise, so much so that the federal government decided to step in.
So we have a panic on obesity rates ginned up by the media, and of course the government decides to step in with the science, and here we go.
The problem, though, politics and an economic push and pull, because billions of dollars were at stake with the pyramid, deciding where Americans' money for food would go. Lobbyists put the pressure on the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and adjustments were made accordingly. Baked goods like biscuits and white bread, originally slotted into the smallest space at the top of the pyramid, were suddenly moved to the largest section at the bottom, along with grains. Dairy, for example, received its own space on the pyramid, despite the fact that a large portion of Americans don't even consume those items because of allergies. So what was originally intended to be an official blueprint for healthy eating turned into a moneymaker for the highest bidders in the food industry.
And you know what I love about this little article too is the news talks about, oh yeah, these evil corporations. But I mean, this is the problem that always happens when you concentrate power in government. Concentrated interests will grab that power, whether it be some, it could be just some advocacy group, or it might be a big business that is looking to, maybe get some sort of subsidies or tariffs or something else, right, to help them out. And here they're literally seeing the problem. They're saying, oh, these terrible lobbyists, they got in there and screwed up our science, right? And I mean, they were teaching this to kids in school like it's the science, right? Yes. And yet it was just all distorted nonsense, and all because you concentrated power in government, so it got captured. But anyway, I don't.
And you know the thing is, though, Jason, the media promoted this thing. This food pyramid, it was heavily promoted by the media because the government came in with the science, and this has to be the most wonderful thing that you could imagine. Is this food pyramid that will give us all this healthy? It will bring such good health to Americans if we just follow the guidelines of the food pyramid, when it was basically a lie. Most of it was a lie. And the media, the same media now who's out there telling us how bad it was, blah, 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 and that kind of stuff, they were promoting this thing. And this is what has happened when the media have made choices and get in bed with the government. They start to promote these lies, just like they did with COVID, just like they did with the Russia hoax, and on. We can go here. We can spend a whole show talking about the things that the media promoted that have left us worse off than we would have otherwise would have been. And this food pyramid that we are talking about here was heavily promoted by the media. And look at where we are today. Oh, shit, we made a mistake. Oh, my God. Yeah.
And that's the sad thing, too. I mean, they're sitting here, they're trying to blame these companies and say, oh, well, now we've got to sue, Kraft and, Nabisco and all these other companies for billions because of the supposed harm that I don't really think they can prove, but the supposed harm that they're claiming that they've done in selling us Hot Pockets and Cheerios, for years and years and years. And yet, we clearly know that the government lied to us on the food pyramid. Where are the billions for that? I mean, who do we answer to for that, right? And this is the whole problem of letting government be the arbiter of this stuff. That literally was touted as the science. And I don't see how, if they can't even get the food pyramid right, how can you trust them with anything else?
They can't get the food pyramid right. They didn't get the COVID vaccine right. They didn't get the Russiagate hoax right. And on we could go. How we could trust them? How we could trust them to do anything for us? And this gets back to the whole issue I'm trying to raise here. The government making choices for us. There's no bureaucrat sitting in Sacramento or no bureaucrat sitting in Washington, D.C. could make better choices for me than I can make for myself and for my children. It just cannot happen. It's impossible.
Yeah. Well, I think we've squeezed all the juice out of this story for now, but I'm sure they'll be making some big trouble in the coming weeks because this just broke. So I think we were kind of talking about this before a lot of other shows would have been talking about it. But I tell you though, we were going to talk about forbidden words, and we just didn't have enough time to put the entire story together. So we'll probably talk about that next week. But that does take us to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And in this, we have just a little bit of chaos. It seems a little bit disconnected now since we didn't have the other story in there. But we're talking about Jasmine Crockett and kind of some of the stuff she was, some of the arguments she was making in Congress recently around Epstein. And the Epstein scandal is kind of a huge, serious scandal. And there's real reasons to be upset with the Trump administration for a lot of people in that administration touting this as something that's more to it. And then suddenly when they are in control, everything seems to have gone off the rails on it.
Yes.
But that said, the Democrats also have some pretty dirty hands with Epstein. And there's been some people like this woman from the Virgin Islands, I guess, who's sort of a fake representative, I guess you'd say, because she has
she's a delegate. The Virgin Islands is not a state, it's just a territory. But she has, I think she votes in committee, but she can't vote on the floor. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, so anyways, they were looking to censure her not too long ago because it turned out that she was literally in contact with Epstein while they were doing some questioning of somebody on Congress. And she was taking instruction. I think it was Trump, wasn't it? Or was it that they were grilling? I can't remember. But anyways. So she was literally taking dictation pretty much from Epstein on what questions to ask. And so she was being grilled about this to be censured. And Jasmine Crockett came to her defense. And part of her defense was try to smear any accusers. So she went after Republicans. And let's watch how she tried to, I guess, falsely associate some Republicans to having a connection with Epstein. Let me pull that video up.
Democrat who's been on defense over Jeffrey Epstein is Stacey Plaskett. She represents the Virgin Islands. She was texting with Jeffrey Epstein the day of Michael Cohen's hearing. Her questions pretty closely followed the text messages between the two of them to ask about Rona Graff, Trump's longtime assistant. You were defending her today, or in recent days, yesterday, and you talked about Republicans taking money from a Jeffrey Epstein. Here's what you said.
Who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly. Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio.
So Jasmine Crockett was defending one of her colleagues on the House floor, and she decided to tar Republicans with having taken money from a Jeffrey Epstein. Well, that sounds pretty serious. Well, let's hear a little bit more.
You mentioned Lee Zeldin there. He's now a cabinet secretary. He responded and said it was actually Dr. Jeffrey Epstein, who's a doctor, doesn't have any relation to the convicted sex trafficker. Unfortunate for that doctor, but that is who donated to a prior campaign of his. Do you want to correct the record on?
No, she got the wrong Jeffrey Epstein. Somebody else with the same name, and she's trying to tar and smear Republicans. Let's see how she answers this for Caitlin Collins.
On the people.
I never said that it was that Jeffrey Epstein, just so that people understand when you make a donation, your picture is not there. And because they decided to spring this on us in real time, I wanted the Republicans to think about what could potentially happen, because I knew that they didn't even try to go through the FEC. So my team, what they did is they Googled, and that is specifically why I said a Jeffrey Epstein. Unlike Republicans, I at least don't go out and just tell lies. Because it was not the same one, that's fine. But when Lee Zeldin had something to say, all he had to say was it was a different Jeffrey Epstein. He admitted that he did receive donations from a Jeffrey Epstein, so at least I wasn't trying to mislead people. Now,
okay, so she wasn't trying to mislead people. Let's hear her hang herself just a little bit more.
have I dug in to find out who this doctor is? I have not. So I will trust and take what he says, is that it wasn't that Jeffrey Epstein, but I was not attempting to mislead anybody. So number one, I made sure that I was clear that it was a Jeffrey Epstein, but I never said that it was specifically that Jeffrey Epstein.
There you go. I mean, and she's been on other interviews too, and she keeps going on with this song and dance that, you know.
And you know what the answer is? When Jasmine Crackhead speaks, everybody should listen, okay? Because she was talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Everybody who have half a brain know exactly who she was talking about, but now she's backtracking and says, well, I said a Jeffrey Epstein. What difference does it make when we know who you're talking about? You're falsely accusing Lee Zeldin of taking money from Jeffrey Epstein, the sex predator. You're falsely accusing that. Now you're trying to say, oh, it's really a Jeffrey Epstein. And I didn't mean that Jeffrey Epstein. Oh my God, please help this woman. She's really a crackhead. Jasmine Crockett. Let's stop calling her. I'm sure her birth certificate is incorrect because it says Crockett. Is really crackhead is what it really should say, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, and what kills me about all this too is that, I mean, she keeps trying to cover, like, I don't know, by the volume of words she speaks, somehow that gives her cover. I mean, I just feel like she keeps hanging herself farther. I mean, the bottom line is, who goes on trying to make the case that you were tied to somebody else and you say, a man named Jeffrey Epstein? I've never seen anybody else do that unless they're trying to give themselves weasel room at the beginning, you know? You know, you don't say, you know, if you're talking about, like, you know, you say you're trying to make some definitive statement that somebody knew George Bush, you say, yeah, and I met a man named George Bush. Right. And then try, you know, in a conversation where you're talking about the president of the United States, right? I mean, everybody knows you're talking about, you know, the president George Bush, not some baker named George Bush. Right? So, I mean, so nobody says a man named, right? I mean, but she was clearly, you know, she knew what she was doing was wrong at the time, and she was trying to give herself some cover. It seems clearly like what was going on in that case.
Like I said, Jasmine Crackhead. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's a politician, so they're pretty much all weasels. Well, I tell you, I can't. You know, I think we've come to about the end of the show. Leon, you have any last thoughts for the viewers?
Well, we have to save this country. Seriously. We are at a crossroads, and the only thing that's going to save this country is our freedoms and our liberties. We must exercise them, and we must promote them. Save this country, please. It's worth saving.
Yeah. Here. You know, it reminds me of the Reagan quote, you know, if liberty dies here, I think there's no place else to run. I think he said something like that. So,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. But anyways, yes. So like I said, if you're out there watching before the next show, think about what you could be doing in your community, because, you know, preserving liberty is something everybody has to be involved in, or we're going to lose it. So think about what you could do in your community to promote liberty. And until the next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.